Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the sophomore album from Wildernessking, titled Mystical Future. So one of my personal resolutions for this year is that I'd make more time to cover more black metal after I found a lot to really like last year, and Panopticon's Autumn Eternal landed on my year-end list for my top albums of 2015, and thus far I have been failing miserably. Now to be somewhat fair to myself, it's not like I've seen or heard about much in this genre that's gotten waves of critical acclaim that's drawn a lot of attention. My general sources have been pretty dry here, but I also don't think I put enough due diligence to cover the acts that have gotten a little bit of hype. So, as before with Wildernessking, I looked up to the one guy I trust on YouTube to mention some interesting black metal, that'd be Mike Seatown, and I saw that he had covered the sophomore release from South African band Wildernessking. So after seeing how much praise their 2012 debut, The Writing of the Gods in the Sand, received, I decided to check it out, give it a shot. And wow, I'm glad I did. I'll admit I don't always have the best frame of references when it comes to black metal, and I can't always say that I was immediately wowed by Wildernessking as I was by the insane riffing of Wildernessking or the genre bending of Panopticon, or the weird avant-garde tendencies of Wolves on the Throne Room or the progressive touches of In the Woods. But there was something subtle about Wildernessking that really sucked me into that album. Atmospheric touches that recall a lot of post-rock, riffing and grooves that had touches of post-hardcore, but still enough grime and intensity to fit within black metal, plus all the tremolo textures, and enough focus on melody to really stick with me. Plus, and I'll wholeheartedly admit it's kind of inconsequential, but it's a great touch regardless, they actually post their lyrics online. Which, considering how deeply they bury the vocals, that's a real plus for me. So with the knowledge that their sophomore album is going to go even harder, be even more diverse, I picked up Mystical Future, looking forward to 5 songs of blisteringly potent black metal. So did I get it? Well, I did, but it's one of those cases where I feel like I want to like this album a fair bit more than I actually do. Now, don't get me wrong, Wildernessking have taken real steps to diversify their sound, bringing more evocative textures, ultimately structure more cohesive and fully formed songs, but at the same time, I feel like they're just a shade away from really sticking the landing for me and developing a uniquely powerful sound. Definitely a very good album for sure. I like Mystical Future, but I'm on the fence whether or not it's a truly great record, at least for me. So let's start off with the instrumentation and production, where I'd argue the most changes have actually taken place. Now, at the core of Wildernessking sound, it's still here. Fuzzed out riffs that can carry a real melody with the methodical pace of a mantra, subtle yet ragged bass lines, and some of the best drum production you will hear in modern black metal. I'm not kidding about that either. So much of the percussion has a fully formed live sound that doesn't need to have layers or filters to add grit or more of an edge to it. Not only is the playing explosive and borderline progressive, the drum work is insane on this album, but often it's the drums that are driving the change-ups against the hypnotic guitar lines. It comes through most in the distinctive post-rock touches of Transcend, which takes the rattling hollow tones of the layered guitars, adds in some stellar interplay between the bass guitar and the kick drum. Sounds fantastic. They're probably one of my favorite songs on the album. But if we are talking about layering, it's really the guitars that just take the cake for me. The shift on White Horses to a more jagged, grimy tone as thicker cymbals and the tremolo backing textures, for the gorgeous liquid tone floods through the last minute of the song, the melancholic chugging riff on If You Leave, it gives the solo real room to breathe against all that feedback, and especially that soaring hook on I Will Go to Your Tomb that augments the bass group with some compressed layers that reminds me a little bit of the last Baroness album, and yet never felt overstated or like a gimmick. Unfortunately, I will see some of the ambitious layering choices to thicken the feedback can mean that some of the melodies or the solos, if they don't slide through enough, they get drowned out. Most evident on my least favorite track, With Arms Like Wands. And while I like some of the smokier textures, it has a similar issue to one I had with the last Wildernessking album, namely in terms of compositional dynamics. Don't get me wrong, I understand why many of these songs are opting for a distinctive, melancholic, minor key saturated atmosphere that does lead to some smoothly uniform transitions, but there are points in the longer tracks I feel they can kind of drag a little bit and could use another transition or crescendo or two just to really liven things up. And yet, bizarrely, I wasn't wild about the very abrupt ending on If You Leave, which after a slowdown to another crescendo that I thought would slide out gracefully, and yet the very abrupt ending makes the track feel oddly incomplete to me, despite running for 13 minutes. Now, this takes to the vocals, and really, no complaints from me here. You could argue that they're a bit buried or blended a little bit too well, but I could always make out the lyrics and listening closely, and between the visceral, full-throated screams and growls, they came together excellently for me. What caught me by surprise came on If You Leave, which on the opening few minutes features clean vocals from a female singer. Definitely not complaining though, her ethereal presence worked with the rest of the mix and fits thematically within the record, and to be honest, she sounded great, no problems there at all. But what about those themes? Well, like with most black metal, it's a little bit tricky to say, because they're not making it easy for you. Now, Wildernessking went on record saying how this album was more personal and confessional, expanding on themes of their debut, like loss and enlightenment, coaxing it through a lot of very prominent nature imagery. And a lot of the images they evoke are very stark. A white horse erupting out of the surf, beautiful and deadly as it storms forth. Going to a tomb at sundown to crack the mystery of death, only to see the night sky open up in front of you. And while there's a starkly feminine presence that inhabits this record is constantly referenced, one reason why the female vocals work so well is tough to discern what that female presence might mean though. A mother spirit from beyond death, Mother Nature, a muse coaxing forth revelation in the artist. Hell, she might as well be all three, a primal force that we can bring forth death but an enlightenment as well. And while there are a few moments that the writing can feel a little bit clumsy, most specifically on With Arms Like Wands, where I feel the metaphor, I get it, but the word choice is a little bit awkward to me. But for the most part, it really comes together. And yet where things get fascinating for me is on If You Leave, where it seems like even despite how much our protagonist craves her presence, that female figure feels like she must depart. The definition of tragic mixed signals. Maybe her presence was too much for the human mind to handle. Or maybe it was the ceaseless desire for the protagonist to transcend when he just wasn't ready to pass beyond the human experience. Or hell, maybe it's even bigger than that, implying for as much as we might want that transcendence or that higher spirituality, that grand revelation, when confronted with its reality, we push it away subconsciously. Gotta be honest, these are kind of shots in the dark. I do like Wildernesssking's choice to keep things somewhat ambiguous, that I don't really have a clear answer here. It kind of adds that mystique to the album, but in the end, you know, I feel like this is a transitional album. Far from bad, Wildernessking are definitely on the right path to defining and expanding their sound, and they got a knack for some beautiful high-concept poetry, but a few more dramatic melodic change-ups or dynamic shifts could have made this a good album, could have made it really something special. For me, it's an extremely strong 7 out of 10, and definitely a recommendation if you're hunting down some of the more atmospheric black metal. Otherwise, it's a good sophomore step, and if Wildernessking continues to evolve just like this, we could be in for something very special very soon. So check this out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Just a new feature that I've added to my channel. I've got a poll where I want to see what you guys would have rated the album if you heard it. Start some of the conversation going. I'm curious what you would have rated it. But outside of that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming out you want me to take a look at, I will try to give them a listen. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.